Hey superstars, welcome to the Get Rich Without Being a Bitch podcast, and I am your host Vanessa for this journey. We're going to be challenging some stereotypes, shattering glass ceilings, really looking at what it takes to live richly and to design a business that's going to support the life that you really want to be living. I'm going to be sharing lots of tips, tools, and strategies along the way, and I can't wait for you to join me on this journey. Hey, welcome back, superstars, to another episode of Get Rich Without Being a Bitch, the real and raw conversations around what it takes to actually get ahead. And today we're going to be opening up to some questions that have come in on the podcast so that we can get them answered and get you some really practical solutions. I love this question today. Let me just pull it up here so I've got it in front of me. There's a couple of parts to this question. This is from Megan. And Megan, thank you so much for sending this in. I love it. She says, what about if I am being a bitch? How do I know and how do I fix it? Great question. And then she goes on to say, how do you keep things running when you're starting to feel burnt out? What things are the most difficult to delegate and why should you do it anyway? Or are there some things that you should keep on your desk as you grow your business? So she's lots of little questions in there, and I'm just going to go through those because they are super, super practical and I love them. I think the very first one, what if I am being a bitch? How do I know? And frankly, what do I do about it? So for me, and listen, again, there's some context, right, around this because there are some things that societally others might perceive you to be a bitch, being bitchy or bitchiness, whatever we want to call about it. And it is not necessarily you feeling like you are showing up that way. And I want to make distinctions there because sometimes we are putting in a boundary and we're actually saying it with clear, concise, kind language, but the other person that's on the other side of that boundary, frankly, doesn't like it. And, they're hearing a no or whatever that might be. And so they project back onto you their feelings of discomfort and, possibly in their mind or label you something, right? That's not what we're talking about here. I think the important distinction is we cannot help how other people perceive us and what they think. And we cannot control that, nor should we try to, because it's not the best place to be putting your energy. But what are those places when we're not feeling good about ourselves? And I think that's really what Megan is coming to here. And I'm going to use personal anecdotes as well. I think these are always helpful. But for me, if I feel like I am overly ruminating on something after the fact and possibly how I handled something, that might be an indicator. So let's imagine that I have been, in a really stressful time and I've got snappy and short with people and I've kind of said something that afterwards I find myself, playing it out in my head multiple times. That could be a place for me to look. Because I think that once we're playing these things out, there is something for us to examine there. Frankly, do I need to make an apology? Do I need to clean something up? Do I need to go back in, clarify? Do I need to be more mindful in the future? So for me, if I'm ruminating on something, that becomes, an indicator. And this is when we have to get really, really self-honest about our intentions. If our intention is to harm somebody else, to demean them, to put them down, to put them in their place. I mean, lots of different things we might be doing there. For me, that might be, could well be entering what I would perceive as bitchy behavior. It's kind of setting somebody else up to not feel good, to fail. It's kind of positioning ourselves in a, let's say, more superior almost stance. And again, it's in the intent is to harm somebody or get back at them or get even, right? And they're going to be feeling the sting of that. Now, I also believe that a lot of these behaviors can come up when we don't feel good about ourselves. We don't feel proud about we handled something. Is the breeding ground for that behavior is typically going to be stress. Now, sometimes, some people conduct themselves. They have an MO of how they conduct themselves, and perhaps their inner mean girl comes out a lot. Honestly, they don't tend to be the types of women in our community. I have to say that's not the type of women that we're working with. It tends to be lower risk. But where women have shared that, oh my gosh, I really showed up as like, I was a bitch and I wasn't proud of myself, is when they've been under stress. They've got overwhelmed, they're stressful, they've gotten snappy, they've said something, it was mean, it came out of their mouth in a wrong way, or they've possibly kept it at bay in the workplace, but it's eked out and leaked out once they were at home, right? So they got very, very snappy with family members. And this is common, is that perhaps we have a different behavior, things that we don't allow in the workplace, but we've kind of kept a lid on it. And now in the home place where we feel a little safer, and that we can let some of those things out, we actually go and let it out on the wrong people, right? And that's really sad. I know I've done it. Unfortunately, I've done it more than once. It has been a big, big area of work for me personally to work on, my emotional awareness, my emotional self-awareness, and to know when I'm at risk and to frankly take a break. And so those are some of those places where, like, how do we fix it? The first thing I think we have to do is we have to give ourselves some grace, right? If our intentions are good, we've got to give ourselves some grace, and we've got to get curious about why this might be coming up. Why is this happening? What are some of those things that have caused it? Can I point to some of the, the overwhelm? Were there some external stressors? Did I not heed my own warning signs? And for me, when I'm talking about warning signs here, I'm talking about like my emotional temperature. Like the emotional temperature is just starting to go up and up and up. And instead of paying attention to that, typically what happens is we get sidetracked. We're so busy. We've got a deadline. We've got these other demands. And this temperature over here, right, is rising. The demands have got our attention over there. And it's that place where it can completely spill out. This is a place where having practices around noticing, like just tuning in with yourself, like, how am I feeling? Where is my emotional temperature at? Do I kind of feel it rising? Can I become aware of that? And then having some practices around some deep breathing, taking a break, just getting out of the situation that you're in, knowing that you're not going to be in your best place. So that you can kind of course correct before you go into those situations can be really, really helpful. Now, sometimes as well, again, when it comes to stress, we've got so used to operating that way. It's been our MO for a while that, we've started to think that it's the norm. And perhaps we haven't stopped to realize the impact of our own behaviors on somebody else as well. So that for me has been a place where I've realized that if I am not at my best, and again, that stress is coming up and I've got that risk of shouting, saying the wrong thing, getting bitchy, whatever that is going to be, I also know that what it means for the person on the receiving end is that there's going to be fallout. There's going to be fallout in the relationship. That person isn't going to be able to perform at their best. They're going to be left, right, with the detritus of that. And for me, that's like, whoa, that's not worth creating that. That's an awful lot of backtracking or kind of messes to clean up. So let's be very cognizant, right, of our behaviors when we're working with others in relationship. It does impact other people, and there is emotional fallout. And the only piece that we can really control is for ourselves. Okay, so definitely having some practices around what supports you when you know that there's going to be stress. Are you taking breaks? Physical activity? Are you doing some of those things for joy, right? To bring some of those stress levels down, so you are minimizing the chances of that happening. So Megan, I hope that gives you some really good food for thought. That was just the first part of your question though. So let's go back to Okay, it's kind of linked, right? How do I keep things going, running when I'm starting to feel burnt out? Yes, absolutely. Great question. And it's a question that comes up a lot. So we do have to really step back and say, how much do I need to keep going here? Again, are there some things right now that I don't need to be doing? And if I stopped or I took a pause on them, it's really not going to cause the fallout that I believe. Because that's what I hear from women. It's like, no, I can't. I have to keep all the balls in the air. I have to keep all of these things going. And yet those signs of overwhelm and burnout are already happening. So we want to be able to step back, right, and question that. How do I keep going? Do I have to keep going? Can I take a break? Most times, honestly, the answer to this question is yes. It is very rare that you are in life and death situations that if you took a break, it's all going to fall apart. And I say very rare. I have had to honestly do coaches' orders to some of my clients where they were so on the brink of that overwhelm and burnout, and I can see it, and tears are close to the surface, and they're getting very frantic and manic, and I can see the tightening of the jaw and this stress. And they've said, I need your help with this thing here, Vanessa. If I could just do this one thing, this next thing, I'll be okay. My stress levels will go down. And again, I've just done this work for so many years to know that thinking of if I can just is actually a trap that keeps us doing when we need to have a break. And that's when I've had to give like coaches' orders. The best thing you can do for yourself right now is take the afternoon off. And I want you to regroup. I want you to have some time for yourself, take a break, and then we will come back. But we're going to come back in a fresher place. So taking a break is always available to you. And that is probably one of the first things you need to be able to do is that you've got to be able to step away, actually get some perspective, right? And again, also making sure that you are building into your business plan, as you are growing your business, what I call practices, and you'll probably notice I use that term very intentionally. There's not habits. Habits are broken or not. They tend to be more black and white. I like the idea of practices, things that we are practicing constantly that are going to increase our well-being, increase our resilience, increase our capacity to be able to lead, to be able to, frankly, hold more complexity, hold all these competing demands without falling apart, without going back into stress. Because often as we're growing our business, that's what it's about. We're growing the business. We might be managing the team. Things are still happening. Life gets lifey. What we really need to be doing is actually building capacity so that we can hold more and do all of these things. And that requires us to have some foundational practices. So are we setting ourselves up for success at the beginning of the day? Are we prioritizing physical activity, for example, moving the body so that we're not getting that buildup of stress, so that we have places to release? Do we have things like journaling practices, again, where we can start to get those thoughts on paper, get all those stressful things out and kind of examine them, right, in the black and white? So think about those practices that support you in between taking some of those breaks. And again, I can't stress this enough, stress not being the best word possibly to use here. But if you are really starting to run up against that, constantly feeling like the burnout is then I have to keep doing, this is also a place that you've got to look at how can you get some help? Who can you delegate to? And sometimes it's not about hiring. Sometimes it's about asking for help with family members or a close friend or somebody else that can just lighten that load. So lots and lots of things to do. And the last part of Megan's question today is, as you're growing your business, are there things that you should be letting go of? And are there things that you should be keeping? And it's a really great question. And a lot of people struggle to know, as I want to grow, but what do I let go of? And what do I keep? So the quick answer to this is we've covered this in a previous episode, is really letting go of some of those things that you can easily outsource for less than your own time is worth, right? So again, those typically tend to be some admin things, support around the home, some of the things that, are on your plate, you can do, but they drain energy for you. And again, they're not the highest and best use of your time. One of the things that probably you shouldn't be letting go of at this point in time is business development. This is an area that I see so many women wanting to outsource, wanting to get other solutions for, often investing a lot of money, and they're doing it at a time when their business, frankly, isn't set up. It hasn't got the foundations in place. And chances are you really are the best person to be doing business development, which is really those revenue generating activities, generating the leads, closing the sales, getting out in front of your ideal champagne clients. Nobody can do that better than you at this point in time in your business growth. And so that's why we want to get those other things off of your plate so that you've actually got more time and energy for those things. So Megan, some really great questions. I love how you asked some questions there that frankly kind of they all linked into one another, right? They were all, intertwined. And I can't wait to hear from you and what was really resonating for you there. And as always, superstars, if you're listening in today, hey, if you've got some questions that you would love answered, send them in. I would love to be answering some very specific questions for you. Let me know what type of business you're at, what stage of growth, how many, what your team is looking like or not. And what are those specific questions? And we will get them answered on the podcast. And please don't forget to leave a positive review. Let me know what's resonating. What are you loving? What do you want more of? And spread the word with other women in business so that they can get all of this good stuff too.